Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, I'm going to be looking back at a couple of past NBA draft classes, just like I have in some other videos, and just looking at some of the evaluations and rankings for some of the most interesting prospects. So starting off is going to be the first overall pick in this draft, and that is Anthony Bennett. His NBA comparison was Rodney Rogers and Jason Maxiell, and his overall ranking was a 95. It says strengths: Bennett has expanded his game offensively and become almost unguardable during his first season of college ball. Bennett's transition to the college game has been seamless. Weaknesses: somewhat of a tweener, as he is slightly undersized for a full-time power forward, though that's likely his future position. And we all know that Anthony Bennett got off to a pretty awful start in his career. It took him a long time to even score his first NBA points. He just could not make a basket and never got his confidence in the league. He just kind of struggled with conditioning and injuries and finding his role, and basically never really did anything in the league. Bounced around a couple of different teams. I believe is still in the G League, at least as of that video that I made talking about some players that are still in the G League. And he's just kind of hanging out. He's not really doing anything in the league at all, but it is interesting to see him rated as a 95 overall prospect. Did end up going #1 overall in this draft as a big surprise to a lot of people at the time. Moving on now to the second overall pick, and this was, as you can probably tell, a relatively weak draft class at the top at the time, and has turned out to be, except for this guy, because he's really turned around his career from what he showed in the beginning, and that is Victor Oladipo, a 94 overall, and his NBA comparison here is Tony Allen. It says explosive athlete who plays with great energy and aggressiveness on both ends of the floor, fearless slasher with potential to be dangerous as a transition player. Weaknesses: still very much a work in progress as a complete offensive player, was not even on teams' radars as a first rounder going into his junior season. So Victor Oladipo in high school, college, and now in the NBA has always been a bit of a late bloomer, someone that kind of just fit in initially and then eventually realized his potential at each of those levels, and that is, like I said, continued at the NBA level. He's hurt right now for the Pacers, but turned into an all-NBA caliber player and an all-star last year for the Pacers once he was traded from the Thunder to the Pacers. But it took him a little bit. He was good for the Magic initially, but they never really found him the proper role, whether he was better on the ball, off the ball, whichever one. Struggled with the Thunder, just playing alongside Russell Westbrook and the lack of spacing that they have, but has really found his role nicely with Indiana. Next up now is the 6th overall pick, and for the majority of the college season, the presumptive #1 overall pick in this draft class before he hurt his knee, and that is Nerlens Noel, who's a 95 overall in his NBA comparison, is Larry Sanders and Dikembe Mutombo, two really big names there. Says strengths: one of the best pure shot blockers to come along in a number of years. He's a more explosive leaper and has better on-ball shot blocking ability than last year's UK freshman intimidator Anthony Davis. Weaknesses: offensively, Noel's game is rudimentary. He has shown some development, but the general perception is that he will never be a strong offensive player. Instead, he impacts games with his defense, rebounding, and athleticism, and all of those things have turned out to be pretty true. Noel still is not a great offensive threat. Nobody really anticipated that he would become some great post-up player, be able to hit a ton of jump shots. He was always just an energy player, an offensive rebounder, someone that was going to be a big-time athlete at the rim, is going to be able to finish pick and rolls and just be an outstanding defensive player. And with the Sixers initially, which is where he went via a draft night trade, he was really, really good defensively, blocks, steals, all that, and just, it was an awful situation. We've seen a couple of prospects fall prey to that Philadelphia situation just not being a healthy one in terms of development. Ended up going to the Mavericks. A lot of people were excited about that. Never really gelled right with Rick Carlisle, and has now found himself in probably the role he's best suited for with the Thunder, as in an energy role coming off the bench, at least at this point in his career. But moving forward, if he can become more consistent, become a better offensive player, then he could still certainly become a starting center in the league. But again, at the time was rated as a 95 overall. Next up now, and there's a lot of like 94, 95 overall so far, is CJ McCollum, who went number 10 out of Lehigh, 94 overall, and his NBA comparison is Steph Curry / Juan Dixon. So strengths: combination guard whose game is marked by a lethal capacity for scoring. Averaged 21.9 points per game in 3.5 seasons at Lehigh. His off-the-dribble variety is elite: hesitation, rocker, and crossover, excellent shiftiness and ability to burst through an open seam. Weaknesses: McCollum will need to further cultivate his lead guard and team running skills at the next level. At this point, he profiles as more of a natural scoring combo guard, and that's pretty much become true. Obviously, having Damian Lillard in Portland has kind of forced him into that role of being a combo guard, but it's turned out to be kind of the role that he's best for, is just focusing on scoring, some facilitating, and just being a really good second option, a secondary ball handler for the Trailblazers alongside Damian Lillard. When he first came into the league, he wasn't outstanding, but then I think it was his second or third year, he got a lot more opportunities and really broke out and has been a consistent 20 or so point per game scorer the last handful of seasons, although never earning an all-star nod, certainly a very valuable player to the Trailblazers. Next up now is actually the Rookie of the Year from this draft class, and that is once again a Philadelphia 76er, and it's Michael Carter-Williams, at the time rated as a 92 overall. NBA comparison, Marcus Williams / Gerald Sasser says, high-level passing ability, tremendous length and height for his position, combined with a high basketball IQ. Carter-Williams is a gifted athlete and he has the ability to handle the ball well for his size. Weaknesses, ceiling is considerable, but so is his basement, has star potential, but also appears to be a guy that could end up playing the majority of his career overseas. And that's a pretty big statement. Honestly, has come pretty true for Michael Carter-Williams. Initially with the Sixers, when he had a lot of opportunities to kind of be the guy because it didn't really have anybody else, he was really, really good. I mean, you can talk about, how many games they were or were not winning if you want to, but individually as a player, he was playing well. He's putting up triple doubles and was the Rookie of the Year, and then Philly ended up dumping him, and he's gone around to all these different teams, and he's kind of barely hanging on now in the league as a late rotation player, most recently for the Houston Rockets. So that sentence right there where it said that he could become a star or could end up playing the majority of his career overseas it's crazy how accurate that actually has turned out to be. But again, that just shows you how weak generally this draft class was, because he was still a top 10 pick and, like I said, ended up being the Rookie of the Year and raised a 92 overall draft prospect that could have ended up playing overseas the majority of his career, like that sentence said. Second to last now, and these last two guys are by far, in my opinion, the two most interesting players of this entire draft class and could end up actually being the two best players of the entire draft class, despite being drafted middle of the first round, and then the next guy will be later in the first round. First up is Giannis Antetokounmpo, spelling a little bit different there. I don't know if that's the English spelling, the Greek spelling, however, but he's a 92 overall prospect, obviously is an MVP candidate and one of the best young players in the entire league, one of the best players in the league in general. His NBA comparison is Nicholas Batum. It says strengths, athletic wing with a remarkable 7'3" wingspan and incredibly huge hands. He's still in the developmental stage and has grown 3 inches since last year, standing 6'9". He grew a couple of inches. He's nearly 7 foot now. He has amazing mobility and body control for a guy his height. Weaknesses, his level of competition is a big concern because it makes judging his talent and current level very difficult. Without question, he has a large basement to go with his large ceiling. Despite his athletic abilities, he lacks elite explosiveness. And then they had him listed as about the 15th best player in this draft class, which is right around where he was drafted. And just Giannis's development has been incredible because he came from, a pretty small league in Greece, and just really his athletic ability, his physical abilities was what caught people's eye during the draft process, and that's really what got him drafted so high. Not really his skill level, but now he just has a tremendous amount of skill on the ball, playmaking, attacking the rim. He's just such a devastating finisher at the rim, and now Milwaukee has surrounded him with the proper talent, the proper spacing to really unlock everything he has to offer. He still has to work on his jump shot, which is why it's a little bit weird that Nicholas Batum is his comparison, because he's someone that generally throughout his career has been at least a solid shooter, and at times even an above average one, and that's something that Giannis obviously still needs to work on. But nobody could have seen this coming. Like, nobody could have seen 5 years later, 6 years later, that Giannis would be an MVP candidate. I mean, I know he had a high ceiling, but I think they were probably thinking more like all-star high ceiling, not like first team All-NBA. And it's just been so good for the league to have such a bright young star, an international star in the league in Giannis. And last up now, with by far the worst draft picture of this entire draft class, and maybe of this series so far, is Rudy Gobert, who is a 90 overall, and his NBA comparison is Sean Bradley. It says strengths, Gobert has an amazing wingspan combined with a skinny but athletic frame. Coordination and ability to run the floor are above average for a big man. His agility and reflexes make him a solid athlete, even by NBA standards. He has a reliable hook shot with his right hand, plus he has good instincts on the putback. Weaknesses, he needs to bulk up his upper body in order to be able to withstand the extra physicality at the NBA level. Lacks great leaping ability, though his length helps. Yes, it certainly does. And Rudy Gobert has become probably the best rim protector in the NBA, if not, one of the best rim protectors in the entire league. I think he was drafted 27th at the time. Didn't really do that much initially for the Jazz because they had Enes Kanter, I believe, at the time. They still had Derek Favors, and then they also had Rudy Gobert. And then once they traded Enes Kanter away to the Thunder was when Gobert slid into the 5 spot mostly full time and really accelerated the Utah Jazz's defense, and they started playing a lot better with him at the 5, and then they just continued to grow and grow and grow. Obviously now they have Donovan Mitchell, but basically the best case scenario of what you could have expected from Rudy Gobert in terms of offensively and obviously being so good defensively is pretty much what he's become. Nobody really thought that he was going to be some outstanding post scorer, and he's not an outstanding post scorer, but he is solid like the evaluation talked about. And then obviously defensively being one of the best bigs in the league on that side of the ball. And it's just crazy how, how honestly low rated a lot of these prospects were, whether it was top, middle, end of the first round compared to some of the other draft classes we've looked at. A lot of these guys were rated 94, 95 and lower. Actually, all of them were, whereas in the past we've seen prospects at the top of these drafts rated 98, 99, 97 and things like that. So comparatively, it's not an outstandingly deep draft class, but you do have guys like Giannis, like Victor Oladipo, like CJ McCollum, like Rudy Gobert, like Steven Adams, even, who we didn't even talk about, that make this draft class not only interesting, but also pretty talented, at least at the top, just not exceptionally deep throughout the entire thing. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, looking back at some 2013 NBA draft evaluations. Once again, my name is Tucker. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.